I ended up in the fire service basically. My dad was a volunteer firefighter in the parish of Simons, where it was part of the city of St. John, but not part of the fire coverage area. And they had a very small fire department, 2 trucks, and I wasn't allowed out of the car. I'd go to a call with him, and he'd make me stay in the car. But I'm still watching what's going on and learning and whatever the case may be. And it was always sort of in the back of my mind that that's something I would like to do.
Well, I never ever thought in my whole life I'd ever be a firefighter or a policeman. I thought I'd be a soldier in the Army because I was in the Army cadets. I was actually a cadet major. And anyways, life went on, and I moved out into Quispamsis, and a neighbor of mine came up one day and said, hey, I'm a volunteer down at the fire station in Rossley. Why don't you come on down? And I was too busy with life and work. I was working for myself. And no, I'm not interested in joining any clubs or anything, so I put it off. A couple months later, at the end of the summer, in September, and this was like 1980, he came again and asked me. And I said, okay, well, I'll come down and see. And I arrived down at the Rossley station, the old station, and geez, met a bunch of nice guys, and they went out, and we took the old 51 Dodge pumper out and sprayed water up here on the highway at the old Irving that was there before. And geez, had a great time. Enjoyed it so much. Just fell in love with it. And that night, I was handed some rubber boots, a rubber raincoat, a plastic helmet, and gloves, and a pager. And I was a volunteer, bang, that night.
I'm going to say 1979. I was living on the Meaning Cove Road. And that was a morning, quite cold. And I woke up and I said, gee, the sun shouldn't be coming up in this side of my house. So looked out and it was a structure fire. My next door neighbor's house was a structure fire. They didn't live in it. It was empty. And but anyway, so I don't know what time it was, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, I called it in. And of course, everybody came, and where we were right next door, we had tea for the boys or whatever they wanted and that kind of thing. And one of the guys that he has passed now, he was a volunteer here now before, he said, listen, I'm giving up my gear. He says, I've got too much on the go, I want to give it up. So, and at that time it was Art Lewis's, who was a member here, his brother-in-law. So he said, come on down Tuesday night. And I said, oh, well, sure, why not? You know, knew a lot of the guys, and so that's sort of how I joined.
For me, the fire service piqued my interest really when I was in my teens, 13, 14 years old. I remember I lived in Westfield at the time, and I remember seeing the fire truck roll up the end of my street, and the guys riding on the tail, which of course you can't do anymore, but I did actually at one point. And then get off their truck with the long coats and the big high boots and the plastic helmets and all this stuff from way back when, and run over to a field and put this great big field up, you know, and I thought that was really cool with the big paddles and swats and pump cans and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, that's really cool.
I was a volunteer in St. Stephen. I decided that we were moving here to St. John, so I moved up here to St. John, and I'm not sure, I think it was about a year later when Jeff Sayre, the fire chief, came knocking on my door one evening after supper, and we're standing there with a hat, radio, coat, boots, and said he'd been talking to the chief in St. Stephen, and he had told him that I would make a good firefighter. So he come with the equipment, said the meeting's tomorrow night. So that's how I became at that time, volunteer fire department.
Well, the fire department was never really on my radar as a job, even though I have at the time I had a brother-in-law and a cousin who were both on the city fire department as professional full-time firefighters. But I had just bought my house in Quispamsis, the same house I'm in today on the Hampton Road. And Alec Taylor stopped in one night on his way back to work just to talk. I went to school with Alec, so we were friends. And he had mentioned that, you know, they're always looking for volunteers and, you know, you should come down and give it a try. We could use you. And I got thinking about it and I thought, you know, I have a young family. Maybe it's time I give back to the community.
I joined the department as a teenager, still in high school. My older brother was a volunteer firefighter with the department, and he kind of encouraged me to see what it was all about. And so that's how I started. And a few years later, he got married and moved on, and I hit the bug, and I stayed. So I've been here ever since.
Yeah, so I started in 1983. Bill Gentleman and I started at the same time. It was kind of his idea, actually. So it's 9 years as a volunteer. And then in 1992, I got hired on full time. Back in those days, it was kind of just the natural progression of you were volunteer, then you got hired on full time kind of thing. And then I retired in 2023.
I guess had quite a few good ones where you turned a bad thing into a good thing for the people that were involved. And that was mainly our job, is that, yeah, life is our primary thing, property, but you got to consider the people. And that's what was a big thing for me, was making sure that the people were comfortable when we left them. And was a great thing. Some of the bad things, well, my first structure fire that we had a break in and drag out a body. And kids being hit by a train, a loader being hit by a train down here in East Riverside, and just, you know, you do what you have to do afterwards to pick things up and whatever. And I guess in my second to last year, no, I can't remember for sure when it was, but we had Country Club Heights on fire. And we rolled in, and it was just on fire in one building, and it was a big brick facade, and the whole flames were coming out everywhere. And it turned out afterwards that we were working at that fire, and a front window blew out of a house 2 or 3 doors down because another fire started. So all in told, we had 5 to 7 fires and some went out by themselves and stuff like that, but it was because of the wiring, the old wiring on the hill, because it was underground wiring, and it was just junk. But a lot of fires, a lot of fun. More than anything, camaraderie has made everything go so much better. But no, there were some dirty nights and some good days.
Absolutely. Over 40-some years, there's a lot of incidents, but there's 2 or 3, I guess, that probably stand out. One of my first serious calls was a house fire down in what was East Riverside at the time, and there was a man that lost his life in the building. We were able to rescue him, but he had succumbed, and I performed CPR on him for quite a period of time, but wasn't able to bring him back. And that hurts when you don't have success, when something like you try. There was another incident down at the bottom of my street that I live on, that we had a serious fire, and a little girl lost her life. And that's very tough when you lose children. On a positive note, I can remember an incident back when I was a company officer, and we had wee hours of the morning, we had a call for a structure fire. When we arrived on the scene, the one end of the house was fully involved, the living room end, and we had 2 people unaccounted for, a mother and her son. So we summed up the situation very quickly and decided to make an entrance into the master bedroom. We took out the window, and when we went in, both bodies were right there on the floor. Very fortunate. We brought them out and were able to bring them back. The smoke had gotten them, but we were able to bring them back, and a success story was had. So that's a great feeling when you have that kind of success.
That back then, and I can't tell you what year it was, but I was working Station 2 by myself, and we had the old polyester pants, and so we used to take them off and put our bunker pants on to go to calls because they were hot, and plus they melted real easy. So I had done that because we had got a call in for a structure fire in a school. And so I responded with the tanker. Well, it turned out to be nothing, false alarm. So I was on my way back to the station when this call came in for the drowning. And they were calling for help. So I responded. And when I arrived, it was way out the end of the Gondola Point Road. And I went down to the beach. There was some of the guys in the water then. And of course, the mother and her sister, I believe it was there. And her sister was a doctor. And the little boy was lost in the water. And I was standing there in my bunker pants. And I had my shirt on. I didn't have my bunker coat on. And Bill Gentleman was out in the water with, amongst others. And Bill found the little boy and brought him up. And he was out quite a ways. And he was exhausted because they'd been diving under trying to find him. And he's hollering for help to somebody come get the little boy. So I dropped my pants. And so I went out with my shirt and underwear on and brought the little boy in and did mouth to mouth on him coming in. And then we laid him on the beach and we did CPR for a long time, unfortunately. And the end result was not good. He didn't make it. And I never thought anymore at the time. There was quite a crowd gathering around. And here I am working on this little guy. But that wasn't the concern at the time. It was just doing what you had to do. And I had a younger brother the same age and the same name. And so it really kind of hit home. And so at the end of the day, that night when I went home, and this had happened just late in the afternoon, and it happened I had friends over for a pool party at my own house. And of course, I wasn't really in the mood for a pool party when I got home. And when I got home, they were all in the pool laughing and joking and hollering, you know, what kept you? Did you oversleep? You know, and all this crazy stuff like we get kidded. And I didn't sit well. So anyway, I explained what happened, and I said, the party's over. And I went in the house, and they went home. They understood.
Well, the one that stands out the most with me is the accident up on the Hammond River Bridge when the truck and car collided, and they both landed in the river. I was off duty that day, but when the call came in, Jeff Sayre came on the radio and said, Wayne, grab your gear and head for the station, grab tank 2 and bring it to the call. So I did. I went up. It was a mess, but Jeff Sayre took very sick and was taken to the hospital from that call. And Earl Carlton, the deputy, he was there. He wasn't very well. He'd come from home sick. So he said, I can't take it. I've got to go back home. So I ended up being the officer in charge of the whole system there that day. I had some good volunteers there. I had, good working conditions. That stood out because it was something new for me to be fully in charge of something and have things going the way it was. So that was one of that. And
maybe a few like Devonshire. I'm pretty sure that was the name of the street. 2-story house, fully involved. I remember the tone out on that one too. It was for a possible structure fire. I was at Station 2. There was 3 of us there then. Yeah, comm center came back on the radio with an update and said the police are evacuating the street. So we were like, well, is it a possible structure fire or is there actually something burning? And we got there and there was fire blowing out the every upstairs window.
Probably the number one would be the Spicer fire. Remember the Spicer fire down in Sagamore Point? But anyways, the Spicer fire came in the middle of the night, early morning, and it was pretty well fully involved when we got there. And we went inside. Back then, the captains were just firefighters like everybody else. You man the nozzle, you might run things, but then the chief comes. It was a second alarm fire, and then they take over. So now you're going to go and do duties. I remember organizing some ventilation, doing this and that. And we went inside, and I think Captain Taylor was behind me, and I'm not sure who behind him. and we had a 2.5-inch line. And it was near the front entryway that I can remember. Everything's black, smoky and black, but I could see fire ahead off to my right, and I had the 2.5-inch line. I was on the nozzle at that time, and probably ventured in too far, and the floor collapsed, and I just went down. I mean, I think my arms even went out, just dropped straight down. So I landed in the basement, and I'm okay. I'm on my hands and knees. I sort of kneel up, but I'm losing air. Something happened, and I'm losing air down behind me, and I could see a little bit because of the flames, and I could see a beam that had collapsed off to my right, and I thought, well, I got to get out of here quick because I'm losing my air, and it's not going to last long. And I tried to fumble with it, couldn't, so I went over to this beam and I tried to get underneath to get out on the other side to see if I can go in another area, and I couldn't get underneath it. So I come back in, I'm still fumbling with my air, and then I realize, now you know how it vibrates to give you a warning? Okay, I'm going to have to take my regulator off. Like, you have to take your regulator off no matter what's going to happen. And the thought went to my head like, this could be bad right now. I got right down, like face right off the floor like that, and came there, clicked it off, and I could breathe. So that was a good feeling. And I looked over at the beam again, and I went over, sort of got a little bit on the upper. If I moved over a bit, I got underneath it, and I'm going through, and I could see blue sky through the smoke. Because as time went on, morning daylight's coming now. And I was, when it was all black, when I went there, and it was black inside. Now it's getting bright outside, early morning, and I could see blue sky, and I'm thinking, oh, there's a way out, some way to get out of here. And I start climbing over this and hopping over this and skipping and banging and stuff. And I come out on the riverside of the house, and the whole house, the whole back of the house is gone. And I think I bumped into John Codlin, who was doing, he was doing water from the river and stuff like that. So that's when I got to that point. So other than sore arms for a couple of days and this and that, everything was fine.
We were on, I'm trying to think, was it Maliseet Drive? We had a big fire there, mansion. And I was with Jim Smith, Captain Smith, excuse me, on the hose line, and Jim went down through the floor into the basement. And I'm leaning down my hose line as deep as I can, and I'm yelling for him, and I'm not hearing him say anything, and I have to run back out and yell Mayday. And it scared me. You know, my friend and comrade is now in the basement of a house, and it turned out actually quite well. He was able to land mostly on his feet, disorientated there for a little bit, and he made his way out. But the initial happening of that really sunk in. We train about safety, and then to have something like that happen right in front of you. Another one was on Dunedin Drive. And on Dunedin Drive, we used the penetrating nozzle. The roof was quite steep, and I had the penetrating nozzle. They call it piercing nozzle today, I believe. And I was there, and I was ordered to go up and drive it through the roof and see what we could do for progress with this line. So I went up, and I hit it hard a couple of times. It didn't go through, but the third time it did. And when it went through, I went through. And thank goodness there was a floor joist, or a roof truss, not a floor joist, a roof truss, between my feet. And that's why I talk funny. Actually, it saved my life, is what it did, from going down in. And if you can just imagine how that felt. And Captain Hicks was behind me, and he came over and grabbed me by the shoulders, and he rolled me back down the roof. So, and it's funny how things would work today versus back in those days. I came down the ladder, and the chief looked at me, and he said, I'm not going to send you in there for a while yet. He said, would you drive the big tanker? That was my job all of a sudden from coming out of the roof. I could drive the big tanker, 13-speed Road Ranger, and everybody couldn't drive it. He knew I could, so that was my job, turned around, and so that's how it ended. And it ended up with me not being injured, but I thought about that for a while. No question about it. So that was something that grabbed me and thought about it a lot. Go to bed at night. I never had a nightmare in my life, but I would go to bed sometimes and I'd think about those things. Going through roofs. Tough deal.
There's been a number of calls that I still recall that were bad, right? You know, you have the first fire fatality, for example. To this day, I believe it was a homicide. The case kind of got dropped, but it was a bad fire, and that was the first fire fatality. It's always one of those things you dread to ever go to. I've had a few of them in my career, but that was the first, and it still sticks out. And then another one, a bad one, was a family of 5 that died in a motor vehicle accident in a van. You know, all of them. So there's, yeah, you know, 37 years, you go to a lot of calls, but, you know, some are great. Another one stands out as the delivery of a baby, which you don't get to do that very often, and that was pretty cool and pretty exciting. So there's been a lot of calls, but there's been a few that good ones and, you know, unfortunately bad ones that you get to see that, you know, kind of stand out.
We had a young girl, we come into work at 5 o'clock at night. Shift started at 5:30, 20 to 6, we got a call for a cardiac arrest, which is something you don't normally hear in the radio. It's heart attack, you know, trouble breathing, but cardiac arrest. And they said it was a young girl, so it was Eric Hardy and myself. We were responding, and Eric was driving. So when we got there, I said to him, you stick with me close, because he said, you know, I said, if they're in bed, we're assuming it's an elderly person. If they're in bed, we got to get them out to do CPR. And when we get upstairs, it was a 15-year-old girl. And her father was a doctor. Stepfather was a doctor. And he was there, and 2 or 3 other doctors showed up because it was in an area where some doctors lived. And of course, she couldn't be resuscitated, and we couldn't do anything about it or resuscitate it. And so years later, I'm in the hospital, I'm going to have open heart surgery, and the doctor that at that call was one of the doctor's assistant in my operation. Now, I didn't mention anything about it, but he did mention the fire department, and he said, oh, I have a lot of respect for them. And, you know, it's funny how these things come around, you know. But
Anyways, the next one would be like a woman got run over by a car when she came out of church down here in Rossay. And afternoon. Unfortunate, some guy picked up his wife, waiting to pick up his wife in the parking lot, was drinking. And when the people came out, he pulled ahead and drove over this woman. And the people there picked the car up off her when we got there. And she's dressed, you know, like Sunday going to clothes, Sunday meeting clothes, you know, nice looking elderly woman. And she's not screaming or going. She doesn't look like she's banged up too bad. And I held her hand and comforted her, you know, back then what we could do. We're checking her over, and the ambulance is coming, and she passed away. And to this day, that bothers me. I cried. That's the only time I ever cried at anything or had to do with the fire department. because that woman was okay. And she was nice. Anyways.
In 1967, Fire Chief Jeff Sayer and Deputy Chief Earl Carlton. They were the first two paid firefighters on the job. And so they had just started that as a career about a year before I came on. I moved to, I was a volunteer for about 10 years, and in the late 70s, I came on as a career firefighter. And then I moved on to a company officer in the early 80s. And then in 1985, when our long-serving chief, Jeff, retired, I took over as fire chief. Had that role for 25 years until I finally decided to hang up my helmet in April of 2010. Changes, a lot of changes in this department. I remember joking one time to somebody that I was fire chief of 3 different departments, but I sat in the same chair. We changed the name of the department 3 times. It went from the little municipal Rossi Fire Department to the Rossi Regional Fire Department, and then eventually to what's now the Kennebec Cases Fire Department. Probably moving into this building was one of the biggest changes for us. Prior to this building, we were in a little fire hall down on the Commons in Rossi, and it was pretty crowded. This was a big move for us.
Equipment, the manpower, because like when I was, like say, came on as full-time, we were on call 24 hours a day. I had the system in my home. When the fire thing rang, it was answered by the fire chief's wife, but we heard everything in our house. We left our house immediately and went to the station to pick up the equipment and go to the call from there. That's was a big thing then, but now I love the way things are now. You guys have got a beautiful system set up here. I was looking at it there today, and I just wish that back when I was there that we had stuff like that, but it was very rare. We had 1 Scott pack in this department when I joined. I come from a department that had none. So it was something new to me to see a Scott air pack, and it was whoever could get to it first got to use it. The rest of us, well, we were on our own the best way we could.
Absolutely. The technology, the communication, the safety, the awareness of both the people that are fighting fire and chiefs and stuff like that, and the fire service in general. Because now they say, listen, these aren't just flakes that we have. We got to make sure that they're going to be around for a while. And the carcinogens in the clothing, just general safety. And it's advanced so much. I mean, we used to stand on the back of the truck, you know, going down the road and freezing to death, and your all-weather coat, or whatever they want to call it then, it was a long raincoat that you couldn't get fastened because it was frozen. But
Some of the trucks that when I started were just, they were old compared to what we drive now. The gear, you know, you didn't have Nomex or any other fancy materials. It was just black cotton, 3/4 length coat, pull-up boots, leather mitts, plastic hat. They called it a helmet, but it was just plastic. So, yeah, if a person could had some of that gear, or somebody had some of that gear, you know, here's what we had, here's what we're using now, you know, that sort of thing.
Well, of course, I think, you know, the obvious things is that the equipment, manpower, you know, when I came on, we used to work Station 2 by ourselves. You're up there, you were alone all day or all night. And when a call come in, and I've had them, structure fires up in that area, and you're there by yourself and you're trying to pull hose off and lay it down and secure it, and then run back and charge it, and then run up and use it until help got there. And when I see now the trucks, you know, driving on the back of trucks, the older trucks with, you know, we had that old pump 4, and if you stopped on a hill, the emergency wouldn't hold it. So you used to have to jump out and stick the chalk under the wheel by yourself. The chalk was in the front compartment. So it would be down the hill while you jumped out and you hope it didn't go over the chalk, you know, and it's just things like that now that are, and as I say, the technology and the equipment, you know, the things that you have to work with now, and you need them because, of course, things have changed so much over the years in you know, how things are made.
Well, the biggest changes were I guess you could say, was the equipment, the stations that we work in, the training that we received, the salary that they paid us. All of those things would be in my book. That they would be the biggest thing.
Look, listen, and learn, right? The younger generation, to me at least, have a very strong sense of personality, and they kind of think they know a lot when they don't. In this business, you need to really, listen to the people who are above you, right? Who have been there before, your elders, your seniors, right? And really pay attention and in an old school way, earn your way, right? And but also for anybody wanting to use or become a firefighter or join the fire service or any emergency service, I guess, is make sure this is the right career, right? Somebody told me years and years and years ago, it takes a certain breed of animal to do what we do. And it's true. The fire service isn't for everybody. And if it's not the right career for you, then it can be harmful. And it's wise to make sure somehow, whether you can go volunteer somewhere, you can put time in somehow to make sure that this is the career that is the right career for you before you go and invest a whole lot of money and go to school, so on and so forth, right? The other thing I've often said to people is be a part of the job, just don't be the job. And what I mean by that is provide input. Become a part of the job, right? Join committees, do whatever you can to help to influence and make change and to make things better, right?
Piece of advice I would give them is say, what are your reasons for joining the fire department? Because if you're coming here because every Thursday or every second Thursday, you get a piece of paper with money on it. Well, yeah, that's great. But you got to have your heart into what you're doing. And if you do that, then you've got the people that you serve, their best interests at heart. And that's what you got to look for more than anything. We had the book in the fire department way back when I went to fire school, was the first paragraph in the old Preci, it was called, was the main job of the firefighter. 95% of the job is public relations. So that's the main thing. You're there to calm the waters, soothe the pain, help is your main thing. You are there to help. And if you have those in your mindset when you're coming in to do a job like this, every day is just a laugh.
Firefighting's a great career choice. It's not an easy one, especially in the Maritimes. Most of the fire departments in the Maritimes are volunteer. So the opportunity getting into the fire service is probably a little less likely than it is in other parts of the world. It's not an easy job. You have to have great mental and physical health, many ups and downs. A lot of time is spent training, practicing, studying. But you can also, when the tone goes off, go from 0 to 100 very quickly. You have to work very hard under stressful situations for quite an extended period of time without a break, perhaps. The reward is that when you've completed that and you're able to save a life or a property, it's a great feeling. It is stressful. Your mental health plays a factor, and you try not to take that stuff home with you, but sometimes you can't help it. Family's important. You got to keep your family in mind all the time, and try to have something else to occupy your time, and try not to think about the things that have happened. We didn't have a lot of mental health counseling back in the early days, and that's something that's come on in recent times, and I think that's a great a great opportunity to help the firefighters when they've gone through a stressful situation.
Impressions come quick in the fire service. Another job that you may encounter or apply for or be trained to do could be quite mundane. Not a lot happens that changes from day to day. And with the fire service, you're going to see things that you never expected to see, or you may have expected to see some of them, but when you do see them, it's a little different story. So it's going to play with your mind a little bit. Sometimes you may see something and you may feel that, is this for me? And if you have those feelings, talk it over with your chief. Let them know that something's bothering them. On a personal note, I never had any of those things. I was lucky enough to not have to do anything with family, and when family and friends are the worst, but I was able to put it aside and work and do the job and not think about the people, so to speak. So I guess you could say is that what you make of yourself in the fire service from your early years to later is all dependent on one person, you.
Sir, he said, I want to give you a little bit of advice, and I hope you take this to heart and remember it. Just remember, you did not start it. You've done everything in your power to save it. You've done everything you can to be here and do what has to be done. Just remember that, and you'll always get through if you can remember that you're not the cause and you've done everything you can. And I've passed that along to a few of the guys here. Scotty Dunbar for one, and a short time later, Scotty come to my house and thanked me. He said, Wayne, I had a bad call, and he said, I remembered what you told me. And he said, it got me through. And he said, I don't think I'll have a problem anymore. Take in mind that it's not an easy job, but be proud to be a firefighter. Do the best job you can, and you will get through and you will be appreciated. Do everything that you have to do all the training, do all the exercising. But if that's what you're looking at, then yes, I think you should become a firefighter and do the best job you can do.
If I think back to when I started, what would I do different? I don't think anything. You know, we laugh about it now. When you talk to the younger firefighters today and you tell them when we rode on the backs of the trucks and we wore rubber coats and rubber gloves, they're amazed and, why would you do that? That's not safe. But back then, that's the way it was. You worked with what you had. We had a little tiny boat with a motor on the back of it, not much bigger than a trolling motor, but it's all you had. And when you went out on the water for a rescue, that's what you took. And I wouldn't change it for the world. And I think some of the advice I would give them is to get involved in these things. Like, I was lucky enough to be involved in the school program for almost 25 years. My daughter was in elementary at the time. And I remember talking to her and say, what do you learn about fire safety in the school? Do the teachers talk about it? And they said, no, there isn't anything. And I had talked with Chief Greer at the time, and I said, that's something that we could get involved in. I kind of took over public relations. The chief at that time used to get me to do some interviews on the radio and TV, and we used to do ads at Christmas for fire safety. And so I put together a program for the schools, and it was well received, and I did it for 25 years. And
to learn as much as you can when you first start, because once you get on the job for a while and get in your groove, you may not learn as much as you do when you first start and you're young. So you got to get as much training and that sort of thing. Not learning, but you got to sometimes teach yourself stuff. You can't just rely on a training department or somebody that's been there a long time to teach you stuff. You've got to actually teach yourself some things.
I was, of anybody, the easiest mark to keep here. That I never used to get upset at half of what other people did. Letting little things bother them. I'll let big things bother me, but I'm not going to let little ones. And, keep your head on straight and know why you're here. Know why you're here, that it's the greatest job in the world. And we say that. You see it on TV. And it's true. It's true.
It was such an appealing job to be a firefighter in your community, because all you did was help people. All you did was try to contribute back into your community. And it was so rewarding that way that you were proud. Wherever you went, people respected you as a firefighter. And we used to do a lot of community things, raise money, help, take on special projects, just numerous things. It was just ongoing all the time, and there'd be committees set up, and it still does it today. So if you want to be appreciated and be, it's not that you want to be a hero, but people respect you as a hero. Thank you for your service. Just like if you were in the military, fighting for your country. And here you are doing something that you love. It's a family. The camaraderie, the guys, the younger guys, as I get older, being 30 years on it, they kept me young. So if you want such a rewarding job, then, firefighter's one of them. And if you can become a career firefighter, it's a pretty safe job to have, and a pretty dangerous job to have. But it's, service gives you such training, you just can't beat it.
I do miss it sometimes. When you see the rig going down the road and stuff, you do miss it. You don't really miss it enough to come back, but you definitely miss it for sure. You miss the people, the joking around and the torturing each other, to a certain extent, and working on the trucks and going on the calls. You might growl about it a bit when the tone goes off, but you actually kind of like going out the door. So, you might go, oh, just another call, but you actually do enjoy going on the calls. I do anyway. And the odder the call, sometimes the better it is. Didn't get enough boat calls though.
I feel very fortunate that I got the opportunity to be a firefighter, and I loved every minute of it, and I miss it today. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the helping people. It's just the satisfaction when you go to a call, and again, we all know they're not, mostly when we're called out, they're not for good reasons, but there are some happy endings. We had our Christmas program that we started in this department here in fall of '82, and I was involved in that. I stayed involved in it until I retired in 2013, and I actually stayed involved for a few years after that. And it makes me very proud to say that in 2023 was our 40th year of doing that Christmas program, helping people every Christmas. And it was just so nice to see the department carry it on. The younger guys had the passion and still have it, and they're doing a great job of it. And I hope it goes on for a long time, because I think the satisfaction you get from doing that is so good.
Being the chief, I guess, is a difficult job, but it's a rewarding job. I was able to watch the department grow from a small little department to the department it is today. And I'd like to think I had a part in bringing that department along that way. It was hard work, but it was rewarding, and I don't regret a minute of it.
Too little, too late. But a lot of calls, a lot of friends that are gone, and they shouldn't be, because of the way we treated ourselves in the fire service, because we all thought we were invincible back then. Yep, sure miss them.
Somebody told me a long time ago that when you're ready to retire, you'll know. And the Christmas of 21 or 22, I lost track, see? You know, I hemmed and hawed and said, you know, am I going to stay or go or whatever? And because I was turning 60 that next year. And I was like, no, you know, 37's enough. And I knew. And when I left the day of my walkout ceremony, I was done. Like it's kind of like switching jobs. You go from one job and you walk to the next one. Well, you don't continue to think about this one. Now you're onto this one. And my brain kind of went that way. That may be the same way it does when I filter at bad accidents. I don't know, bad calls. You know, when I went home that day, I was like, I'm retired. I'm done. And so it's every once in a while, you know, you see the trucks going and you go, yeah, you know, I don't feel like I should be retired because I don't think I'm that old, but I'm 61. So, so at some point everybody needs to retire, and I'm happy I did. You know, I've enjoyed it, and I still love it. It's a great gig.
I miss the camaraderie of the guys, because it was always nice coming into the station, even though I was the officer. But it was nice to come in, sit down with the boys, talk about what they had been doing, and if we were out on a call, come back and discuss how we worked the fire. I enjoyed that. That was something that I took into when I first became a firefighter, was being able to discuss.
But doesn't matter. It was couldn't ask for a better job. Could not ask for a better job. And the people you worked with, it was a lot of fun to come to work.